man, so you guys are in for a treat today. We are talking layer 2 scaling solutions. We're going to be talking all things layer 2. We're going to be talking about Optimism, Arbitrum, Boba network, all these platforms and more. What are layer 2 scaling solutions? Why do we need them? And why is this such an important trend going forward? Make sure you hit up the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. As always, guys, if you want to trade any of these tokens, which we're going to talk about in this video, you can do so using BYBIT. Links in description. Claim your bonus using my link in the description. Now, let's get straight into this. We want to talk about layer 2 scaling solutions. Now, what are layer 2 solutions? We're going to go through that very clearly today, but first we've got to set the premise. And the premise is that Ethereum is struggling to scale. We've known this for a while now, okay? The more dApps being built on Ethereum, the more users, the more transactions, and this has slowed down the network, driving up the gas fees, creating congestion. This is a known issue for Ethereum. And Ethereum have tried to address this, and in 2019, we were supposed to see Ethereum 2.0 moving from proof of work to proof of stake. We've still not seen that. It continues to be delayed slightly, and we're hoping that that merge happens with the beacon net very soon. But in the meantime, you need these layer 2 scaling solutions, which will help you scale this platform, build on top of the layer 1, and then you can get faster scaling and improve transaction fees. That is the premise in a nutshell. Now, let's take a look at this. So we got to remember that Ethereum, in its current guise, is able to do around 15 transactions per second. Now, to put that into perspective, something like Visa, the credit card company, will process around 1,700 transactions per second. Something like Solana, on average, processes 2,700 transactions per second. ETH 2.0, if we see it soon, hopefully, proposes to be able to deliver at its height 100,000 transactions per second. Okay, so now the layer 2 solutions have got to scale up this 15. ETH is currently operating on 15 transactions per second. It's not enough. It's just not enough. And that's what needs to be resolved. Okay, so those are the issues we have right now. Okay, now what are we going to do moving forward? Well, what is a layer 2? So somebody came up with this novel idea to say, hang on, if you've got Ethereum, let's say Ethereum is this blue layer, this gray layer at the bottom here. Okay, so that's your Ethereum. How do we go ahead and build the layer on top, the layer 2 scaling solution that enables you to scale, run transactions cheaper, and then all it does is it posts the receipt back down to the blockchain. So you can interact on the layer 2, but then you post the receipt back to the blockchain, so the ledger still has the full transaction history. You just didn't interact with this blockchain, you interacted with the layer 2. Okay, so that's what layer 2 solution in very layman's terms is, and this is what this video is about, giving it to you in layman's terms so we can all understand and be on the same page. Now, very simplistically, there are 2 key types of layer 2 solutions you will see out there. The first one is something called a sidechain. Now, a sidechain runs in parallel to the main chain, but it operates independently. Okay, so an example of that, and we'll come on to it, is something like Polygon. Okay, it helps you increase scalability, but it does not run on the Ethereum blockchain. Very important. So in essence, it will not inherit any of the security of the Ethereum layer 1 consensus mechanism. It'll have its own, but that's a good thing, because if this it can be a good thing, because if the sidechain gets hacked, it's limited to just the sidechain, and the main base layer of Ethereum, the layer 1, will not get affected. So you don't get any of the security benefits, but if the layer 2 gets hacked, at least you know the layer 1 is safe, okay? Nothing gets affected with layer 1. And vice versa. If Ethereum, the layer 1 gets hacked, the layer 2, which runs as a sidechain, is safe on its own as well. Polygon, in this instance, would be safe. Your next type of layer 2 is something called a rollup. Now, a rollup is a little bit different. It actually interacts with the main chain. So in this case, Ethereum, it will actually interact with Ethereum, and it will inherit the security and the consensus mechanism. So it will use Ethereum's consensus mechanism, therefore it will have its security elements, but again, If one gets hacked, they're both in trouble. And again, if the layer 2 gets hacked, the main net's in trouble, and if the layer 1 gets hacked, then also the layer 2 is in trouble as well. They're a bit more connected. Okay, now there are 2 different types of rollups, which we'll come on to shortly as well. But let's go and take a look at sidechains, because that's what we want to touch upon today, is what's an example of each. So the first one is a sidechain, like we said. And the best example of this is Polygon with the token symbol Matic. Now, this is the largest sidechain for Ethereum. To put into perspective, they carry out circa 2.6 million transactions per day, and that's just as of now. Even during this crypto winter, it's had much higher. The security is contained, like we said. They do not inherit the security on Ethereum. It operates on its own blockchain. It's got its own consensus mechanism, its own token, and if anything happened to it, it's isolated, right? It doesn't affect the Ethereum mainnet. Now, Polygon is huge. It's got a large market cap, and we're going to cover off and compare some of the market caps of each of these different layer 2 solutions and a few of their other stats as well, to kind of really get a versus and a comparison between all of these various different types of layer 2. So that's a sidechain. Okay, and again, Polygon's the best example of that. Next up, we have something called rollups, right? And within rollups, we need to understand that there are 2 different types of rollups. You have an optimistic rollup, and you have something called zero knowledge or ZK rollups. You've probably all heard of this, but it's a bit complicated to understand what they do, right? And this video probably won't explain all of it, because I don't want to spend 10-minute tangent explaining this. If you do want a separate video explaining this in detail, let me know in the comments below, and we can break it down in a separate 10-minute video just on this point. But let's keep it very high level and very simple. An optimistic rollup is optimistic, right? When a transaction comes through, it simply goes, you know what? I'm going to assume the transactions are valid as a default state. So instead of saying, hang on, we're going to assume it's not, and we're going to go investigate to see if it is valid, it's going to assume it's valid. And then if somebody, i.e. a watcher on the network, they're called watchers, calls out the bad transactions, then they will go and investigate only those ones that have been called bad transactions. So you can see how these are now creating efficiencies. But remember, anytime you're creating efficiencies to speed up, you are creating a weakness somewhere else. This is known as the blockchain trilemma, right? This is the balance of all the crypto. All blockchains have this issue. How do we balance scalability with security and decentralization? Okay, we saw the issues with Solana recently, right? Really going down and struggling with their security because they're really good at speed. And so they've optimized for speed, but they're lacking on security. You then look at something like Bitcoin, which is considered the gold standard in what it does as a store of value. But in order to be that, it's got really good decentralization, the best in class. It's got really good security, perfect track record, but it's very, very slow. But that doesn't work for a layer 1, right? Because people are interacting with that daily to use for DeFi, to use for dApps, for play to earn, for metaverse, for NFTs. It needs to be fast. It needs to be usable. As you can see, with the optimistic one, it assumes the transaction's valid. Now, obviously, that's not good, right? You can't assume transactions are valid by default, but they need to do that for the speed so it can progress and be faster. That's the whole point of a layer 2, right? So that's your optimistic one. It will assume it's true. It'll push the transaction through, and then you have a period of time. I think normally it's a week. We'll come on to them transaction by project by project. About a week where watchers can say, hang on a second, that one is wrong, pull it back, let's take a look and investigate properly. But then you're only having to do that for a few. Now, a zero knowledge rollup, a ZK rollup, does the opposite. It goes, hang on a second, we're not going to assume anything. We're going to attempt to prove every single transaction is valid. So obviously that's the right way to go about it from a security point of view, but it's not going to be as quick as an optimistic rollup by nature. Okay, so very, very important. So we're going to show you some examples of both of these and different projects which you guys can buy the tokens of or invest in or keep on your portfolio as part of your layer 2 solutions. You should have a portion in your portfolio for layer 2s. And we're going to look at some of those. But again, remember, they'll interact with the main chain and they share the consensus mechanism. That's the difference of a roll-up to a sidechain, which is Polygon. Hopefully you guys are all keeping up. Okay. So now let's look at some examples of rollups, and many of these you guys would have heard about before, but let's get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty. So Arbitrum is one of these rollups. Okay, now they have no token, they don't have a token, so you can't buy the token, but again, it's using this optimistic rollup. Optimism, I've typed in optimistic, that should say Optimism, which is the OP token, is an optimistic rollup. So you can see why I've got confused there. It is an example of an optimistic rollup. You've had a lot of hype around this over the last few days that they've had their first airdrop to the public, giving out free OP tokens. Again, guys, these tokens, OP, Boba, Loopring, you guys can trade all of this on BYBIT using my link in the description. So do head over into BYBIT. They have all of these tokens which I'm talking about available. So do check that out. Anybody who signs up to BYBIT and deposits, I'm going to enter them into a draw to get 6 months free access to our course member live stream. So our course member live streams are 3 times weekly live streams where just our members pay to jump on course member live streams, talk about tokenomics, talk about fundamentals, talk about technicals, all this kind of good stuff in real time in the market as and when it's happening. So you're going to get 6 months free access if you enter that. So sign up to BYBIT. I'm going to be doing a raffle and you guys could be in it to win it. So Arbitrum, Optimism, okay? You then have something called Boba network, okay? Boba token. Again, these top 3 are all optimistic rollups. Now, the bottom one I've included is a ZK rollup, okay? That's Loopring, LRC. It's really important that we understand what the difference are between these. Now, what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've lined some of these up just to kind of give you an idea of the size and tokenomics of some of these projects. These are some of the stats you're going to want to look at amongst various others. If you're investing in these, you'd want to do an even deeper dive into each one of these. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to deep dive into any one of these. I've already done a deep dive into the Optimism tokenomics. I'm going to link that up. Make sure you go watch that one to get an understanding of how I look at tokenomics in depth for each of these projects, because that takes an important part of deciding whether it's ready to be a part of my portfolio. So what I've done here is I've started off with the protocol. Next to it, I've put the type. So let's start with Ethereum. That's the base layer 1. Market cap, 217 billion currently during this lovely crypto winter of ours. Obviously, there's no fully diluted for Ethereum and no circulating supply. I then moved on to Polygon, which is a sidechain. We've covered that off, right? So it's a layer 2 solution. The type of it is a sidechain. So it's got its own consensus mechanism. It's got its own token. They currently have a market cap of 4.1 billion. So not too shabby at all. This is a big project. Fully diluted market cap of close to 6 billion. Circulating supply, 68%. So 68% of all the Matic tokens are already into circulation of a total of 10 billion. So that's quite good. That's quite healthy. And that's definitely something you want to keep an eye out on in your tokenomics. Again, if you want to deep dive into the tokenomics of any of these, you've got to let me know in the comments so I can go ahead and make that for you. But that's a good number to look at there, okay? And now they're operating at 2.6 million transactions per day. So by far, this is the largest of all layer 1s on the network here, okay? Is Polygon. Then let's look at something like Arbitrum. Again, it's a layer 2 solution, but this is optimistic, okay? It's not sidechain. It interacts with the main Ethereum blockchain and it inherits the consensus mechanism and it inherits the security. There is no Arbitrum token, so there's nothing you can buy here in terms of the Arbitrum token, and it has a daily transaction volume of 102,000 per day. Optimism, this is something you can buy. It's the OP token. Again, you can get that on BYBIT if you wanted to trade Optimism, and it's an optimistic rollup. Market cap currently sits at 303 million already, guys. 303 million and a fully diluted market cap. This is why it's important to look at fully diluted. It's already trading at a fully diluted market cap of 6 billion. So that's the same as Polygon. Very interesting, okay? And again, if you look at the transaction volumes, it's a 10th, if that, of the daily transactions being done on Polygon currently. So it's a far smaller thing. And this is the issue for me with Optimism. Again, go watch my full tokenomics breakdown of Optimism because they only have 5% in circulating supply. So I explain why that is a concern. Of the 4.2 billion tokens fixed for Optimism, only 5% is in circulating supply. So you're going to have constant minting pressure, not minting, but circulation pressure of more coins coming into the market, putting down pressure on the price. Okay, now the final layer 2 optimistic rollup I wanted to share with you is Boba network. And I'm going to explain shortly why Boba has a slight technical advantage over Arbitrum and Optimism in the optimistic space. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to explain to you why. Now, they're much smaller. They've got 69 million in market cap and a fully diluted market cap of 218 million. So this is a small project, so be careful. This is a small market cap project, but again, these are the ones that could do a bigger return. If you put a tiny bit of your portfolio in something like this, you could see large returns if you back the technology, if you believe in it. Now, again, the circulating supply is not the best. It's 32% of a total 500 million fixed. I'm happy that these coins do have fixed supplies, so we know that eventually there will be some reduction in the number of tokens coming to market. There's a fixed supply, but again, still 68% of the tokens need to be pushed into supply. Now, if we look at comparatively Loopring, which is the LRC token, again, you can still trade this on BYBIT. That's why I like BYBIT. They've got all of these coins, right? LRC, Boba, OP token, Matic, Ethereum, of course. You can trade all of these using the link in the description. Now, if you look at this, this is a ZK, right? So this is a zero knowledge rollup. Now, they've got 654 million in market cap and a fully diluted market cap of 722 million. It's almost in between these guys, right? It's still small, less than a billion, so small project, but they're doing good transactions per day. I think the last reading, which they don't share these very often, but I could find they did do 40,000 a day. I think this was last year though, so I want to see an update on this figure. Hopefully they can share it soon. And 91% of the circulating supply, which is really good. Okay, so there's only 9% more to come into the market, which is good. We're pretty much at full dilution there on Loopring. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of the landscape. But now what we need to understand is, hang on a second, what are the difference between some of these? So I've explained to you the difference between a sidechain, optimistic, and ZK. But now within these optimistic ones, what's the difference? Well, the difference is this. So something like Arbitrum, it wants to find the particular point of the disagreement, okay, over the transaction history. Now, in contrast, something like Optimism, it will take a more holistic view. So what it means is it's going to look at the fraud more holistically, where Arbitrum wants to nail in and go, was the fraud on this day? Was it in this week period? When was it? And it will try to narrow it down. Arbitrum takes a more zoomed out approach, okay? Optimism takes a more zoomed out approach, and that means Arbitrum has higher transaction capacity, equating to higher performance, okay? So because Arbitrum's trying to nail down in a more specific point, it's going to be more scalable. Whereas Optimism's taking a bit more of a broader brush, which takes it a longer time to try to find the fraudulent or bad actor. Now, I'm going to even trump that, because the problem with Arbitrum and Optimism is, remember when we said that they assume all transactions are valid, right? So Arbitrum, Optimism, Boba, they'll all do that. They'll assume that a transaction is all valid. But the top two, Arbitrum and Optimism, they have a weak period where a bad actor can be called out. So once they've assumed a transaction is valid, there's a week where these watchers can come out and say, oh, that looks like a fraudulent one. And then if your normal transaction, which is non-fraudulent, was caught up in that batch, your transaction could be delayed by a week. Now, can you see how that could be a bit of a problem? Yeah, not great, right? You're trying to buy an NFT, you're doing a DeFi play, you're playing in the metaverse, and you're caught up in this fraudulent batch of transactions, and now your transaction is being investigated, and it's not going through. Not great. Boba Network solves this a little bit. So Boba Network, even though it's a smaller project, the technology is a little bit better, in my opinion, just from my initial research around this, because what they're trying to do is bring that dispute period down to just a few minutes. So they only want to narrow it down to a few minutes and only take that batch as the batch which is getting investigated, quickly investigate all of those, and then the system's good to go. So instead of a week, you're going down to a few minutes, and that's always a positive, okay? So there you go. There is a quick summary on all of these different layer 2 scaling solutions and why we need them. But as you can see on the screen, it's not that easy, is it? Because we know ETH 2.0 is coming up. And so the conversation around the town right now is, hang on a second. You've got all of these layer 2 scaling solutions, people investing in layer 2 solutions. Polygon has grown massively to close to a 6 billion in fully diluted value. But then if ETH 2.0 comes out and you're scaling at 100,000 transactions per second, do we need these? What's going to happen to layer 2s? Are they going to die? My view on this is no. And there's a few reasons for this. One, where is ETH 2.0? It's not there yet, right? So let's not plan for something which we think is going to come, as in we've not seen it. So let it come and let it start taking some transactions away from layer 2s before we start worrying too much. And the second reason I say that is ETH in its current state, we're nowhere near, and crypto as a whole, we're nowhere near mass adoption. So for Ethereum to be truly scalable when we get to mass adoption around the globe, you're still going to need these layer 2s. all these solutions, which are novel ways of creating more efficient, speedier transactions and scalability on a layer 2 and posting the receipts back down to a layer 1. These are all great technologies which are going to remain. They're not going to go anywhere. It's just going to make Ethereum even faster, even better, and that's what we need as we go more and more towards more adoption, mass adoption, and that's what we're going to need. I mean, if you think the transactions are crazy today, and we've seen how, you know, even with Optimism, I cover it up in my video again, go watch that, the airdrop and the chaos around the airdrop, it just struggled with it, right? People struggled, and you saw the transactions tick up, and it struggled. Do you imagine when we're close to real mass adoption, you've got NFT projects, exciting ones, minting left, right, center. You've got huge companies using the blockchain. You've got everybody around the globe using it for DeFi, NFTs, play to earn. You're going to need these. They're not going to get anywhere. So definitely for me, layer 2s form a part of my portfolio. Again, something which I split out as a small part of my portfolio, and I put a little bit in some of my favorite plays as we've listed here. Now, again, you're going to need to do a deep dive of the tokenomics of each of these projects before you jump the gun and start investing. If you want a breakdown of any of these specific projects as a tokenomic breakdown, let me know. Go watch the Arbitrum one, which I'm going to link up here. Hit a like button. Don't forget to subscribe. As always, guys, if you want to trade any of those coins, head over to BYBIT. Use my link in my description. Get your sign-up bonus. But then once you've deposited, you're going to enter my draw, and I'm going to pick one lucky winner who's going to get 6 months access for free to our course member live streams. Yes, you're going to get straight into our member live streams, technical analysis, fundamental analysis, critique your portfolio, all of this kind of great stuff, all for free, just because you go into BYBIT and you deposit even a little bit of funds there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, smash up the like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.